All right, good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order and begin with our consent agenda in the minutes from January 16th.
Like a motion, please.
Motion. Second. Motion second. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Carries. Action items, GIS licensing, CAD, Mr. Patrick.
Good morning. This is a request for GIS server licenses to support the Hexagon CAD system. With 3 licenses to provide redundancy. The cost is $112,188. This was planned out as part of the CAD project and budgeted for 2025. Quote is attached. This is after GSA contract. Are there any questions?
So this must be a little different than a standard GIS single user license.
Single user for your district, that's correct.
Yeah, right. It's a little bit more right. Okay.
Absolutely. This is what happens behind the scenes to allow
Yeah, call that work.
yours connect to us. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions for Dusty? So in budget, been part of the plan, and we need probably a motion on this stuff.
Yes, we do.
Entertain a motion.
Motion to move forward with the entry contract.
Thanks. Second, Chief Richmond, any additional discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, Dusty, and back to you with Critical Insight annual maintenance.
Yes, this is the Magnetics. This is our security operations center. They provide 24/7 monitoring of our network, of our equipment, vulnerability testing. They protect our end user clients for cybersecurity purposes. We've had this for a number of years, so this is our annual contract with them to continue to provide this support. Which was also planned for and budgeted in the 2025 budget, and so I would entertain a motion to move forward with this contract. The dollar amount is $61,121
Is that for a year?
per year.
Make a motion.
Go ahead.
Ty, Chief Williams, the second.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any additional discussion? No, our IT company that we consult with, there's been a major uptick in just volume lately.
Has been, and we've partnered with the county to do some cross pollination and testing. They also have, since we started with Critical Insight, have moved to use them as their contractor for the county. So we've been really pleased with their service.
Yeah, so anything that protects emergency services from that. Which that would be valuable. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, Dusty. Priority dispatch renewal, Kim.
That is our annual renewal for our EMD software that we utilize to triage our medical calls. In that it's for the maintenance, the support, as well as the training. They come and do an inventory or a evaluation 3 times a year. So that is a renewal for $56,910. It was awesome. Yes, budgeted and planned.
I make a motion to approve payment and continuation of priority dispatch.
Thank you, Chief. Second. All right. Any additional discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, Kim. New business Q4 end of year report. I saw we had some last minute edits. I saw Scott's name was scratched out here and she there's the right end.
Thank you, Scott, for that opportunity, but I would love to see what you've got prepared for us today.
Okay, so this is through the fourth quarter and the full year. So some quick revenue highlights. Our sales taxes were slightly under our budgets. We've been talking about the shortfall we've been seeing countywide for sales taxes, and we're seeing that in our emergency communications as well. The trend is going to continue in that fashion. Same with our 901 excise taxes, trending under budgets. We're continuing to see fewer landlines that are receiving that tax that people are keeping. And with the lack of legislation to send that to more mobile devices that are coming online, watches and iPads and tablets, stuff like that, we're still seeing the shortage of our revenue source for that. Charges for services, pretty much on budget, just slightly under. That was, I think, due to timing of Cheney fire or Cheney police coming online. Planned them to be online at the end of the year, and then we came on mid-year. And then our interest and miscellaneous income, mostly interest income, still favorable interest rates during 2024. So we had a slight increase, a slight over budget in our more of a slight positive over budget in our interest income from our cash reserves. So all in all, fairly close on our revenues thanks to our additional interest income. There, the next slide, you can just see what our actual detail of the 1/10 was, just about $175,000 under budget. 275,000. Okay, on to expenses. If there's any questions on our revenues first.
It seemed to me like we were thinking that the sales tax revenues would actually be even shorter than this. Did that occur? Were we pretty on?
I think this is pretty reflective of where we saw the trends. If we look back to 23, this probably is pretty darn close to 23. I think we had budgeted a very modest increase in sales taxes, but didn't see that come through.
Okay, so
Just
the
continue.
projection, these reflect the projections pretty well then.
Yeah. Okay, on to our expenses. You can see the three breakouts between operations, technical administration. Most were just slightly under. Our administration was under more than the rest of them. Most of that's reflective of the outstanding payment that we're awaiting to make to the city of Spokane for the joint use of this facility. I will call out for the finance team, we have encumbered that amount, almost the entirety of that 1.5, not quite all of it is outstanding amounts owed to the city of Spokane. We're waiting for that agreement to be signed and invoice to be received. That's still not been received yet. Then you have of the three above, you kind of have the breakdown, salaries and benefits. Training slightly underneath budget, but much closer to budget than previous years due to the great job that the team's been doing with hiring and continue trying to keep our staffing levels where it needs to be. Supplies and services, again, that area that we owe the Spokane for the joint use of this building. And then capital was pretty darn close to our budgets. There's one little change when it says in the narrative, supplies and services and encumbrances are, it should be under budget for the year. It's called out a little change out. Any questions on expenses? Okay, and then you'll see here our entirety of our revenues and our expenses for the year in each of the lines, budget to actual. And then you can see down below what our ending fund balance looks to be. We've got our revenues less expenses, $9 million. It shows that reflects the building that we purchased. So we did utilize some of our fund balance. So when we look at our $27 million fund balance, our 3 months, just forget that one, it's 3 months, 3 months operating reserve that the board set aside for unforeseen or unanticipated changes in financial situation. You've got a remaining reserve for the building of 13.7 million. Our remaining CAD reserve of 1.25 shows the encumbrances that the team has reflected of 1.5 million, and our projected fund balance use of 1.9 million for 2025. So we have an unrestricted balance in our reserves of about 2.6 million.
How do you do?
Oh,
All right.
your hard work is not going to end this.
Another year of remedial training.
Oh, yeah, I should be able to see what I hear something.
Thank you, Scott. Any questions for Scott? Okay. Full business, City of Spokane update. That's me. So since we last met, obviously it's been busy. Start with House Bill 1258. We saw the 20 county law and fire agencies across the county take opposition to that bill. We traveled over, provided testimony on 1258 in Olympia to the finance committee. That bill is still in committee. Did see yesterday that it is scheduled for an executive session on the 25th in that committee, I believe at 8 AM. Kind of summarize testimony from our side. I think three key points. I'll try to be brief. One, we support the fair apportionment of 911 excise tax dollars to the city of Spokane, and then related to that, trying to articulate why we didn't feel it was fair and equitable apportionment. We looked at history for 911 tax revenue generation, as if we had been separated, and then we compared to that essentially revenues versus services provided. And so it depends on the time period you look at, but for all time periods evaluated, we saw that city was providing more in services than they generated in revenue based on tax origination. So that was one of the things we spoke to. And then this bill proposes based on usage, right? So if you did a portion based on usage, then maybe the city we would have a different number at that point, but we didn't feel that would be equitable if we're essentially separating out different jurisdictions, that it should be based on the taxes your communities generate for that apportionment. So there's some different perspectives, I would say, on that. But we did not feel that it was fair and equitable apportionment, because when we already looked at costs of services as compared to revenues generated, the city already exceeded that. And then on top of that, this bill, I think there's some opportunities to improve understanding on context for the bill. There was testimony that said, hey, we need this bill because we are becoming our own dispatch center, but in the bill language itself, this isn't the context of the bill as written currently, is not based on becoming a primary PSAP. It says a secondary, because it states in a county in which a call transfer occurs. So it's kind of what we refer to the current model. And so the bill then goes on to provide a formula for apportionment with a 80-20 split in there. So you can see there's a 20% reduction in the bill, which you could say, well, that's intended to account hypothetically for the work that's already occurring on the city's behalf. But I think, again, when we look at the actual revenues versus costs, we already see more services provided than revenue generated, and then this additional proportionate on top of that. So that's what we provided from the SREC side. Obviously, the city's got a different perspective on that, but that was the second point that we really conveyed. And then again, the third being the timing of the bill being the reason for the decision by the board. And then perspective that the bill is needed because of the decision, but I think we go back and look at the timelines, the bill dropped on January 10th, and then the board made the decision the following week in relation to that bill, so. Still in committee, we'll see where that goes, should get more next week, but my overall, when I started picking up on just different perspectives. From both sides, and so trying to approach this with good intent from both sides and to understand various perspectives. I had met with key officials on both sides to try and understand, and I'll try to summarize what I think are the two primary things for, how did we get to here, because there's some I think opportunities to improve communication on both sides. So one, we go back and look at the timeline of history events, January 10th becomes a pretty critical day related to one, the correspondence back from the city and what I would call the status quo language. And this is my opinion, and certainly other board members can weigh in, but my opinion is that status quo meant one thing to this group. It's the term that's been utilized for 2 years in strategic planning to really not change anything and maintain what we're doing. I think in talking with various board members on the county side, that was the perception, and then talking with folks on the city side, if you go on and read the rest of the letter, you can see that there was additional actions identified, and maybe status quo didn't mean what there's, the same thing on either side. So I think there was an opportunity for improved communication there. And then secondarily, and probably the more, what I would call the catalyst for the board action last time was the dropping of House Bill 1258 on the same dates. And those were the two primary reasons why we have the motion from the board. In discussion with officials on the city side and taking that at face value, it was expressed they felt that would just improve positioning for negotiations. Obviously, the perception on the other side from the county and the other member agencies was it did not. So I looked at that. If you take both sides at face value, there's probably some communication gaps in there and some opportunities to improve that. So I've continued to work. Had two meetings with the Board of County Commissioners to brief them and continue to make myself available for key city officials that want to meet. Since that time, there's been correspondence go back and forth between county and city related to the potential for apportionment and or even mediation for several of the topics. That is still in motion right now. I anticipate some sort of request based on whatever that outcome is coming back to this board. We do not have that official request as of this morning, so I don't think there's anything to decide yet till we see an actual request and know what that might look like. But it is interesting for me. I still feel that there's opportunities to improve perceptions or understanding on both sides, because I think there's, in talking and trying to understand both views on this, there are some gaps in perception, and I think we probably could have had more discussion on status quo to clarify and make sure we all understood that. And so then I focused primarily on House Bill 1258 and what that has done, given that the other member agencies don't view that as fair and equitable. But there is continued advocacy from the city of Spokane side in support of that bill. So I know that's a bit of a barrier, but we'll see what happens over the next couple of weeks. But that's how I would summarize current circumstances from last board meeting to today. Any questions, comments?
Just on 1258, I think from our perspective, I know you mentioned some of the testimony from city officials, and that's really, I mean, we understand the origin of the bill wasn't based on the SREC board's vote. And I think from our position, it's an allocation fairly to support emergency communications for any any municipality that's operating a PSAP or secondary PSAP, as you know, SPD serves as a secondary PSAP right now, aren't receiving any of the tax dollars that are allocated for emergency communications. So we see this as, even without a separation, but especially based on SREC's recommendation to separate the city, it creates a sort of additional relevancy and urgency to support the work of first responders and to improve and sustain public safety for city residents as well.
Thank you, and that's where I think, right, there's some probably gaps and
Just point of clarification, but to clarify. SREC as the primary PSAP takes all 911 calls for the city of Spokane, all of them, not part of them, all of them. And then if it goes to PD, Spokane PD, then we package that call, we being the primary PSAP, being SREC, packages that call to the secondary PSAP, which is the city of Spokane's PD. Is that correct?
yes.
So we are working for them. We are providing a service for them.
Yeah, and I think that's where there's a different. In perspective or understanding, there's certainly work that occurs beyond that, so that's what I would, Tim and Nora can weigh in here. But what I would call intake, so the call intake's happening in that body of work. And so when we go look at the body of work that's already occurring for city of Spokane, there's additional work certainly for SPD, right? Once that call is sent over for what we probably call triage. When we look at current services already provided versus 911 revenues generated, we see that city, based on usage, has already spent more based on that unit of work that's already occurred than the 911's funds available. So I would say I agree with city that SPD has not received additional funding from 911 excise tax dollars, but we would also say that's because they've already received more in services than the revenues generated by the services.
And the main thing was clarifying for John Q. Public, who may not understand that only the primary PSAP, which is SREC, can receive the 911 call, period. The secondary PSAP does not receive, which is City of Spokane's PD, does not receive 911 calls. They get their call, they get their dispatch from SREC.
Yes.
Period. I just want to make that crystal clear. So there's not some missing, hey, we're waiting for a phone call. They do not receive emergency phone calls. Those
They do
calls
receive.
come from SREC.
I'm sorry to interrupt. They do receive the call, and there is a transfer, and there are call takers in our SPD dispatch. There's call taking and there's dispatch. Those calls are transferred.
They're
Correct.
triaging their own calls. So we take the initial call, we get the phone number, address.
Right.
Basics, what's going on, put that in a CAD system, transfer that over, and by the time they get it, they pick it up. And they're able to, they have all that information in front of them, so that body of work is being done by the SREC call receivers. The other main thing that I think is getting forgotten with the 911 excise tax is the purpose of that tax is to pay for the phone system, its connection to the EZNet on the state level, and the initial call taking. So what they say is that funding is from call maker to call taker. So the minute that is answered on the first go, that funding is supposed to be done. And so one of the other things that I think is important to point out is that the phone system is paid for, supported, maintained, provided by SREC through that funding, which PD has through us. So I think that that's a huge chunk of that funding, which is, again, as Scott mentioned during the Q4 report, that funding is dwindling. And even now, it's not fully paying for all of the services that it's meant to pay for. So.
Understood. And if based on SREC's recommendation to separate the city, we would have to absorb all of those costs.
Correct.
Yeah, and I think that's where there's the difference is that the bill wasn't written from the context of a primary PSAP. The bill talks about the call transfer accounting, which is calls transferred, so it's written from the context of, and this is the gap where I think there's some opportunity to improve perspectives on both sides or improve our communication. Is that bill is written in the context of current circumstances or what we call the status quo or that unit of work, what I call call intake. Call intake, putting it into CAD, all the entries still occurring from SREC. And so I would say fully support the city getting a fair and equitable apportionment of their tax dollars, particularly under a primary PSAP where we would apportion those dollars out. I think the challenge I have is almost, double dipping, right? If the work's already occurring, is exceeding the revenues generated, and then to apportion additional dollars. But I think that's where, there is some opportunity to sit down and talk about implications of that bill. But I think it can be solved at a local level. I think adjudicating a bill at a state level through legislation is not the best way to solve this, but I think this board has been willing to try and figure out an equitable apportionment and give those tax dollars. Even with this bill, I would say, okay, well, then there needs to be a provision that would account for the costs incurred for services already provided. There needs to be some fairness. So more to come. I think we will probably receive some formal correspondence from the county or city, and we'll make sure to share that out. when we have. Any additional comments, questions? Cat update. I do see another edit here. Dusty Patrick, I think Dusty did that himself.
Happy to do so. We had a mobile build workshop earlier this month, that was very successful. Had partners from all over the county and our law enforcement partners participate in that, from Liberty Lake, Every Heights, Kalispell, County Sheriff, SPD, power users of the system to help us design what that mobile is gonna look like in the field. So it'll best serve our partners and that use the system. We sat down for 3 days with the vendor and our project managers and had a really good session to help build that. They have the opportunity, our users now, to use that in the field, in the test system, so they can run New World and the new system simultaneously to find bugs out in the field. Enhancements that we didn't come up with for those 3 days, and then to report back in the coming weeks to help us build the best product that we can. We have functional testing for all other disciplines scheduled for March 17th through the 20th. So we'll have our call receivers, our dispatchers come in here into the conference room with console set up and have layouts designed. We'll have the vendor on site to really run it through its paces. We're hoping to have the system built out enough at that time to test everything and anything that was in our RFP requirements. We have 1,300 line items that were required by the vendor to provide. So this is our chance to hold them accountable and test it. So we'll have our people involved in the build week come in, other power users of our system. We'll have people from SPD come in and test it on the law side, run it through its faces and see where we go. And then the vendor will be on site to fix bugs immediately, hopefully, or take those back to fix at a later date. Really excited for that. Any questions on those two topics or? With the purchase, the approval of the GIS licensing, Joe will be able to start setting that up for our production environment, so it'll be up and running. We're still on track to go live October 14th.
Okay, thank you, Dusty.
One question, actually, is there still discussions on tablet command, or what's going on with that and the interface with text?
Absolutely, that's part of the requirements, was a bi-directional interface with tablet command. So that's included in what we have already purchased.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anything else for Dusty? All right, thank your entire team. Facility update, Lori.
We had 2 open houses for our employees to come and do some walkthroughs and ask some questions and see it before we change it all. So that was a really good time, I think, for our employees. They all seemed, the general feedback was they're all really excited and looking forward to the relocation and the new facility. So we're excited about that. We are also working with our contractor and architects on some visioning sessions on what we need to see for a new building, what our hopes and dreams are kind of with what we have, and that will start to narrow down the exact costs of the remodel and the things that we're gonna need to make sure that we definitely have and the things that we nice to have. Additionally, we're gonna be doing some site visits in March. We're going over to Tacoma and then to the East Coast to look at some different facilities. The main purpose for those is to, number one, a lot of these are newer facilities to see kind of what the trends are, but additionally, we're going to facilities that have different levels of hardening. So we have a good understanding of what our potential hardening needs to be for our facility as a 911 emergency center. So we're going to some that are meant to withstand giant hurricane winds and others that aren't, so we're kind of taking a look at all of that, but things are moving along nicely.
Question for Lori? All right, moving on to staff reports. Kim, operations.
We still are seeing a slight decline in our 91 incoming calls and a slight increase in the claim check calls. I think we saw that all through 24, so it's still continuing. Our hold times are still within reason of what we would like. And then on to the dispatch statistics, it is still increasing for law, still a decrease in fire. But we know where we are in the year and come April, it's all gonna be great, right, Cody? It's gonna be great. Our crime check reports, we did have a pretty significant dip on the online reporting, so we'll look into that a little bit more, but otherwise everything's increasing for our crime check reports. On the phone with our staff, we are gonna be revamping our survey that we send out to our citizens, just trying to find another data set of what we're hoping to accomplish for our community and education. So we can continue to draft that and share that when we have that pushed back out to our citizens.
Is that specific to crime check?
It is,
Yeah,
yeah, so it goes out with every report that we take over the phone and every report that we do online. And so there's a 4-point question on satisfaction, customer service, and then they understand what the next step is, and that's always been kind of our delta of lack of understanding. We did increase it significantly in 24.
Yeah, we made a lot of improvements as far as understanding that, so this would be additional questions or modifying the current
Yes.
questions, trying to get at the heart of.
Trying to really narrow it down and then being able to streamline it a little bit more and seeing where we can close out a little bit further. I think we're still seeing
Inform.
38, 39%, or no, 47 is up too. For understanding, so we're getting half of our people understand what the next steps are, whether it's giving evidence or getting a call back from the detective or where to get their report from. So
Yeah.
we've got a pretty solid survey that we send out that has a good amount of data on it of what your department is that you called, what their front desk number is, what their records line is. So all of that's pre-published on every survey that goes out. So we're not getting a lot of those calls back, which is what we used to do. How do I get my report? Who do I talk to next? What are the next steps? So we're alleviating a lot of that burden on the call receivers for taking those incoming calls.
So really informing decision making on how to continue to improve caller experience with.
All right, EMD statistics are still looking well. We're still waiting to hear back from ACE on our accreditation submission. We haven't had any update yet. We did get some feedback, and so Carrie and her team have made some re-edits and sent some information back. They wanted another data pull, included a full other month, and so we have that ready. We just need them to open the portal so we can submit it. And then hopefully by next board meeting, we will for sure know. So that's kind of our goal. And then also our state accreditation or state certification for our training program is still being packaged. It is a lot more invasive than we originally thought. There is a lot of work that's going into it and hundreds of files that are being saved. So we can ship that as a clean package to the state for review. And our staff vacancies, we did have a slight up or increase in our vacancies. We're at a 10% vacancy. We lost a couple trainees towards the end of last month. I think one self-selected out, and then we had 2 that just weren't doing great in training. And so they were also self-selected out. We do have an academy that is on the floor now. They actually finished a few weeks ago, so they've been on the floor. I think they're in their second phase or B phase. And we have a new academy starting March 27th, and we have it slotted for 8, but right now we have 6 ready to process and push through, so. And that is my update.
Yeah, thank you, Kim. Questions for Kim? Technical, let's see.
All right. Radio shop is busy. We've got our biannual radio system upgrade that we pay for through Motorola. Every other year, they come in and upgrade software, hardware at our 23 sites. This week, we're working on the radio consoles here in the dispatch center, the backup center, the jail, the airport. So updating the software on the consoles. There's no downtime as that occurs, as we can move dispatchers around, work on a console, kind of chase them around the room. Next, in the following 2 weeks, we'll be working on the system. Motorola will come on site. We'll have some beeps and bloops on the systems as we fail over from the prime to the secondary sites. Some radios going to site trunking. They'll still be connected. But connected to that one site for about 20 seconds until the system fails over. We will be in communication through LCAB and FCAB exactly when those are gonna happen, so users in the field will be notified when the radio lights up with some different information. Very exciting, this is a good time. Our techs are hands on the ground, really involved in this. We're one of the only customers that does that. A lot of others contract out with users like Dave Wireless to come and perform that work. Our techs really want to be involved and know the system because we have to support the system when Motorola leaves. And so we're really utilizing our 5 techs in the field, and you know, they were excited as they're out on the floor the last couple of days, just being able to get in and play with the system. So this is a good time for them. On the IT side, we're neck deep planning that for the infrastructure of the new facility. As we start to get more input and vision of what it's gonna look like, how many data drops that's gonna look like, where consoles are gonna live, where phones are gonna go. So being proactive, because some of the equipment has a good lead time on the network here. So really scoping out, working with Brandon to see what the final needs are gonna be, and then we goes down. So, which is also a fun project on top of maintaining the system day to day. But it's really fun for the techs. This is cutting edge stuff, and you know, cross security cameras and access controls, and needed, you know, for all of our partners finding solutions, innovative solutions that'll be cost effective, but cutting edge. It's not something that you inherit. It's something we develop from the ground up. So very exciting stuff. Any questions?
Another question, but a comment. Thank you, Dusty, for your team. This will probably fit under your report or City of Spokane update, but City of Spokane has gone under contract with a consultant, Matrix Consulting, and help to understand what it would take to become a primary PSAP. And so Dusty and others at SREC have been supporting Matrix, and that's been our intent from the board, ensure that we give Matrix Consulting our full support to help. We're obviously vested in the city being successful, so thank you for, I know you guys provided them a lot of data.
Absolutely. I'll call out Bryce Lemming and John Hagelin on the IT side, getting a lot of phone information, phone data for the calendar year 2024, just to kind of help the city determine what the call volume is like based on jurisdiction. And then Randy Langford on the radio system, same thing. So appreciate that call out. Thank you.
Yeah, thank them, please. Anything else for Dusty? Hey, finance, Tim.
Finance, so we just looked at the year-end report, which is, we're done recording for 2024, so now we'll start compiling the year-end financial statements. All of the data for the county, which is the modified accrual data that we share with them, we've already opened up that communication. And our large report for the state auditor's office, so that'll be our focus for a couple of months. Like various drafts and reviews, and push it through the finance committee, as well as finally through the board before we do submit it in May.
That's the end of your report.
That's it.
Did that feel good?
About all the day-to-day stuff.
Brad and I already did all this heavy lifting.
You deserve a short report out. Any questions for Tim or Jenny? Thank you. Okay, Megan, you're up for human resources.
Good morning. Yes, every year our insurance pool, WCIA, asks for a cybersecurity audit. So we are currently for renewal of our cybersecurity insurance. So we are currently working with IT to get that over to them. We're pulling numbers for our annual report, getting turnover data and hiring data for 2024. And then I'm happy to report 2 of our 3 bargaining units have signed contracts. And we're working with our 3rd one to hopefully get one settled soon. And hopefully Jeff is back soon.
Any questions for Megan? All right, good news on the contracts, thank you. Administration, Lori.
So, aside from the building and then helping to provide some of that information for the city of Spokane. Finance and I have started the early discussions on what user fees will start to look like, especially as we take on CAD. And kind of some philosophical policies that we were hoping to bring forward to the finance committee in the next couple of months. So we've been talking about that. Additionally, we've got a lot of great things happening with our public relations and our public education. We have a newsletter that is now going to be going out monthly. Kelly did a great job of putting that together, and did you sign for it?
Yep, I signed you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So you should have received it.
I got it.
Yeah. You should have received it.
Thank you, both getting the message right.
So, the point of the newsletter is to just provide our public with some information to give them an idea of how the 911 system works and what to do in certain situations. So, we're hoping that the more education we provide, the better our calls will be coming in. So, and aside from that, just plug it along.
Mitch, your mention of user fees kind of brought up an idea I wanted to float with the board, and it's probably more for feedback from our law partners, but I think it does impact us entirely. So when we think about what the 1/10 emergency communications allows for, and one of the areas that was called out when it was passed through the ballot was crime check. And it does obligate us to provide crime check, but I don't believe it obligates us as to how we provide it. So I think we're all pretty keenly aware of the increasing costs that we continue to experience with technology and personnel. And I wonder, don't have to, obviously it's not a decision point today, but I would like to get some feedback from the board going forward is knowing how challenging it is to maintain our staffing, not only here in Spokane, but other emergency communications centers. Should we be looking at a different way of delivering crime check that might help us level out some costs, manage our costs differently, and possibly, especially as it relates to our user fees, in terms of maybe automating our crime check more than people's intent it is today. So it's a thought, it's different than what we've done in the past, but I think it would be valuable for us to look at what does the future of crime check look for delivering that services for our community. And again, law partners are going to be pretty impactful, but it does impacted, but I've got ideas on how it might be able to be done differently, but I don't know I don't know all the intricacies of how the team handles it today. So there's often up an idea. And again, that's something that maybe we can pursue more at either the ops committee and or the finance committee as well.
So it's interesting that you bring that up, Scott.
I've
I think
been
I've talked
meeting with a vendor for about a
Oh,
year.
right.
So there is a vendor that is providing, they are in the process of implementation with a handful of PSAPs across the nation that does non-emergency triage. And so it's done through an AI bot. We've had multiple demos with them. It is pretty impressive. We've kind of done it from the caller perspective, and it is very real. It does sound very real. The tone, the inflection, the questioning is very realistic. So it doesn't sound like you're talking to an actual robot. So that we've used them for our text out. We have brought prepared 911 forward to you guys a while ago and texting out. So we have that capability of being able to send out surveys through text, or to be able to send out text, is this really an emergency, instead of doing all the callbacks on the 911 hang up calls. And so we've also looked at it. They have a transcription translation. And so they translate up to like 233 languages. Automatically it detects it. They have a couple bots that are already built for Spanish speaking. And so I can speak in English and it could go back to the citizen in Spanish, and then they speak to me in Spanish and it comes back to me in English. So they have a whole bunch of technology. They are 100% PSAP focused. They are very much in the what's best for the citizen, what's best for the responders, and making sure that there is no or minimizing the area for potential fail risks on that. And so we are, we've paused further conversations with them, just waiting to see what's happening with everything else. But they are looking at the non-emergency triage piece of it, and there are so many calls that come in, as we know, on crime check that are not legitimate calls. It could be, there's a train arm down, and it's not necessarily us. How do we do that? Can we deflect that to BNSF or to the Union Pacific? My lights are out, Cala Vista, you know, so there's a lot of those calls that come in, that it's just a one-stop shop for crime check. And we don't ever want our citizens to not utilize crime check, but is there a way to ease that workload? And that's kind of what we're looking at, because you can look at the statistics nationally and nobody is ever gonna be fully staffed all the time. There's always gonna be ebbs and flows in staffing, there's always gonna be ebbs and flows in training and retaining. And so that's kind of the philosophy is, the next step would be to retrain or redirect, they call it call deflection of the workload on the non-emergency side. And so there is that ability for the crime check reports, there's not, but we know that we're only getting just slightly under 19% of our crime check calls, of that 280,000 a year. 18% of that is crime check reports, the rest of it are non-emergency calls that go out to our partners. So,
I know that Arctic has been looking at prepared 911 as well.
yeah, they got kind of a glimpse of it when we had we had a 1-month demo for the transcription translation, so that overflowed into the Arctic. And they were able to see it and they really liked it. Our staff, our supervisors loved it because it's just a regular transcription, so they have more detail on the call when it comes in than just what's coming in through the narrative as it's paraphrased in through the narrative. So it gives a better full picture of it. But I'm really honing in on the non-emergency triage.
Public records, that's funny.
Yeah, Sherelle and I are best friends. So there are resources out there. They're not the only source that does it. They are one that I've been very impressed with. I've looked at 3 other companies and I've not been really impressed with what their services are that they provide. But this non-emergency triage has a lot of merit to continue to go down that path. One of the statistics that they pulled, they just went with San Jose and they utilized it and kind of took it to their board of, if we're not looking at minimizing our people, like that's not, we don't want to reduce our staff, we don't want to do that, but we know that we can't handle the workload, we can't handle the training and then the loss of people. And so the cost of this software literally cut their overtime in half because it's deflecting up to 60% of their non-emergency calls. So I support you.
Well, again, it's everyone's budgets are very sensitive to increasing costs, and no one's unique in this room, so. To the extent that we can bring forth some automation and some technology that might help us manage those costs much more affordably in the future and free up some of the utilization of our folks who don't handle the safety emergency related calls, I think that is everything.
See, the sheriff has his hand up.
I do. You know, something to consider when we talk about maybe automating crime check or changing the service levels that we're providing there. The public has felt very strongly about maintenance of crime check. They feel very strongly when they call in to report a crime that might not warrant an officer or a deputy to respond, that they talk to a real person. I also think we've got to be careful about how we produce a report that becomes a court record. Because I know maybe the 18% end up being crime check reports, but those crime check reports have requirements that they're produced by someone, because those turn into cases for us that we do investigate. And frankly, those crime check reports are a fairly significant part of our workload back in the investigative phase.
I would echo that. When we saw crime check go away, our drop like crazy, and our rate came in. The crime check went dramatically down, and nothing that changed when crime check came back. Even though we're not talking about eliminating crime check here, I'm still really concerned about using that information flows and community that has other crimes, the ones we're working on, pretty cool.
It's a little choppy.
So, no.
You're a little,
That's what I got from the.
yeah, a little choppy, chief, but I think probably echoing the sentiments that the sheriff shared, so similar concerns. Yeah, I think more globally, whether it's crime check or not, that this whole user fee discussion is an important topic to all of our agencies, so. If not this, what are the other, areas we can look at, that's across the board, it's been part of the city of Spokane discussion for sure. I think it's important to everyone that we look for creative opportunities around user fees. Anything we can do, even if it's not this option, but I think, important to continue to bring good ideas or possibilities on how we might go about that, because I don't know a single agency that we represent that has excess revenues, so we're trying to make those public safety dollars go as far as they can.
Speaker silence.
All right, no need for an executive session today. With that, entertain a motion to adjourn. Second. All right, thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
I probably won't be.